then you'll start to look at this evidence in a different light. You'll start to, well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm seeing something that's not there. And start to actually discriminate against her rather than give her the standard that is afforded to each and every citizen in our country. And that is that the state, that the government come in here and prove their case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. But you can get away with that if we can get a jury to hate her.
Casey Anthony's defense team came out on top as jurors declared Casey not guilty of murdering her own daughter, Caylee. So how did the prosecution lose the jury? Let's ask our legal panel. Joining us is Orlando attorney Diana Tennis, former San Francisco Assistant DA Jim Hammer, and criminal defense attorneys Bernie Grimm and Ted Williams. Ted represents Brandon Sparks, the son of the man who found Caylee's remains. Jim, I don't know if that's actually fair to say. How did the prosecution lose it? This was, I think, a highly technical case on the elements of murder, and you've got a situation where the remains have been out in the elements for 6 months, destroying lots of the opportunity to determine cause of death. But your thoughts on this verdict?
I think what you ended with is where I'd start, Greta, which is I've prosecuted a bunch of murder cases and investigated a bunch of them. When you have a body that's been that decomposed, when the crime scene itself is obliterated, being able to tell how was the person murdered, by whom, perhaps trace evidence and all the rest of it, it takes away a lot of the details that most juries want, especially in a death penalty case. Juries want, at the end of the day, if they're going to vote guilty and especially look at death, say, I feel like I know how it happened, I feel like I know the motive, and I believe he or she did it. And all along, the best evidence they have is liar, liar.
It's not a question of wanting. I mean, I wouldn't use that term, and I'll go to Bernie on this, but it's not necessarily a question of wanting. It's whether or not the prosecution has proven beyond a reasonable doubt every element of the case, every element of the charge. One is that she was killed at the hands of someone else. And if the evidence just isn't there, the jury doesn't have a choice. If the jury's not convinced.
Yeah, well, the jury's going to say, well, to the state, I'm not going to make up some evidence that you don't have. We had a great discussion with you and Dr. Biden about a week ago regarding the cause of death. And not to get it too technical, but they couldn't provide, the doctor, the medical examiner, could not provide a cause of death. So essentially, you're throwing into the jury box, she's a slut, she's a liar, she's a bum, she's a liar, she's a liar. And then just say, and I want you to conclude that she has to be a murderer. And it was very smart for Jose Baez to take that on and close it.
It doesn't mean that she didn't do it, does it, Diana? It simply means that the prosecution, for whatever reason, couldn't meet its burden. Doesn't mean she's innocent.
Well, no, I totally agree with you, Greta, but I gotta say, the more and more I hear from the alternate juror that has come forward, the more and more it sounds like I was wrong all the way along, and the defense was doing a great job, and the jury was buying what the defense was selling. It didn't sound to me like this was just a, we don't quite believe, but we think she did something wrong. It sounds to me like they actually believed the defense's theory, and I got to give them credit where credit is due. They did an amazing job that I did not see coming. So I think it's more than just they found reasonable doubt.
Well, I guess listening to this jury, you know, that I agree in part with you, but Ted, is in these instances, in these cases, the jury really does take the jury instructions seriously, but beyond a reasonable doubt. Right. And you can walk out of that courtroom and think, she's the worst murderer there ever is, but I just don't know how she died. They're just two different competing theories.
And that's absolutely right. Let's be candid. If the jury would have made a decision here pursuant and based on emotions, she would have been found guilty. The evidence just was not there. We need to learn to respect the jury system, or there's been a lot of outrage about how the jury ruled in this case, but I think that they were there, they listened. By the way, I was in that courtroom, I observed that jury. That jury was really listening to the evidence in this case.
The other thing I think is important to point out is that we see a very different trial than the jury. We see all the argument when the jury's out of the room. The jury actually saw a completely different trial than we did, even if you watched the entire trial on television.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the jury didn't see, I think there were rulings that kept evidence out that the jury didn't see, and the jury doesn't get to analyze it in the way we do. They just they see it, and when they go back there, everything that's on the news and the newspapers was kept away from them, and they sat there and 12 people could not be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt how she died, where she died, when she died, or for that matter, they don't have to prove it, but they didn't prove why she died.
But we should take our hat off to Jose Baez. He did an excellent job.
We're going to take a quick break. Right. The legal panel is staying with us. Straight ahead, you heard the verdict. Casey Anthony is off the hook.